Hello everybody and welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing you a brand new review, a spoiler-free review for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which is being released in cinemas this Wednesday the 28th of June in the United Kingdom. I've been very, very fortunate and I have seen the film today at an event at the BFI IMAX. I know the world premiere was a couple of weeks ago. I know the UK premiere is this Monday. And I'm going to give some spoiler-free thoughts on the film, as we will be doing a spoiler discussion later this week with date, TBC, all that sorts of stuff. But as always, I do want to hear from people at home, so please do comment with your thoughts on Indiana Jones. If you've seen the Dial of Destiny, I'm really curious to know what your thoughts are on the film. I know a few people that have. And it's going to be really interesting seeing how other people do react and discuss this film down the line, especially following the canon stuff, which I am going to talk about ever so quickly. But before I do, as always, follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. Link to Redbubble in that description below. Normally I'll plug the social medias. There's going to be some Asteroid City stuff on there tomorrow. I've been at the event today at the 180 Studios in London, so I've got some photos from there. I'm going to put some on social media, so a bit of incentive if you're a fan of Wes Anderson to check those out. Obviously, if you like the film, if you've seen the film, we also have a review that went up yesterday. But aside from that, let's talk Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and this is going to be an exciting one. Of course, I'm a massive Indiana Jones fan. We did the Steven Spielberg retrospective last year where we got to review all 4 films. That's why we didn't do it this year. It's been on our schedule already. We weren't going to do it again, but we do have the reviews in a playlist with some updated thumbnails to match this for the time being. So do have a look at that if you are curious. We had some really good guests that came on for those reviews. A lot of fun talking those. So aside from plugging that, my thoughts for the 5th one? It's going to be interesting. Leading up to this, heading into this release, where we are today, I've been excited since it's been announced. I'm more of a late bloomer of the Indiana Jones franchise. I didn't see them until 2008 for the first time. I didn't see Crystal Skull till lockdown when we did it as a live stream on the channel, if anyone hadn't seen that. So I'm a late bloomer in the sense that I didn't grow up with the original trilogy. I saw them all for the first time when I was 11, sort of 12. Absolutely loved them. One of the best trilogies ever made. And of course we do have Crystal Skull. And I do know it has its fans. I know they're out there. I know they've been more vocal recently as well. So heading into a 5th one, the announcement of it, of course, Disney era, Lucasfilm, of course, they had to negotiate Paramount. The Paramount logo is at the front of the film, which is still cool, but very weird seeing that with the Disney one. Of course, you know, I'm not going to go into the politics of how that sort of stuff works, but it's one of the reasons this film took a lot longer to come out, why they've only just come out on Disney Plus. Loads of behind the scenes which you can read up on a lot of other good podcasts who have had that covered before. But aside from that, heading into sort of where we are today, the trailers I thought were fine. I was very lucky at Celebration. We got to see a 5-minute clip of the tuk-tuk chase. Dave was with me at that event. I really liked the footage they showed us there. I've not seen too much from the trailers. I've hidden from a lot of the marketing. I don't want stuff to be spoiled. I know there's been spoilers out there for a while when stuff was being filmed in other countries, mainly in Sicily. And of course this premiered at Cannes in mid-May. And I'm going to give my thoughts on Cannes because very interesting in comparison to Elemental. So this is a very lukewarm reaction, I think it's fair to say, at Cannes. It was very split. Rotten Tomatoes meter, if people follow that sort of stuff, was sat at 50%. And I'll be blunt, I don't think it's a film that should be at Cannes. I don't. Normally big blockbusters don't go there. Yes, Top Gun Maverick went there last year, Mad Max in 2015, and Solo did in 2018. Those were within a week of their releases. They weren't big early, they weren't mega early. This was 6 weeks before. And if this had played off for the Cannes crowd, and the Cannes crowd is very different to the general audience, specifically a big blockbuster, an Indiana Jones film. It's not your normal audience that are going to be attracted to this, and the reception from it wasn't great. I think they've spoke about this in their interviews in the junkets recently. Of course, Harrison Ford did get his award, which was great to see. I know he's very emotional, and we all know his thoughts on the series. It is, you know, his character. He is Indiana Jones. He's made that crystal clear. Looking at you, not Chris Pine, but yeah, I almost got the wrong one there. A lot of Chris's in Hollywood. Chris Pratt, of course. But aside from that, it's been really interesting heading into today because the press screening in London was on Tuesday. I know a lot of people that were there. Some very much liked it, some didn't. And that's been a bit of intrigue for me. Is this going to be a split film? The people I trust really liked it. So I was excited for this heading into today. Of course, being at the BFI IMAX, the biggest screen in the country. I'm not going to lie, Oppenheimer's going to be, you know, make or break for me for that cinema. That is the place to watch Oppenheimer, the only cinema in Europe showing it on a 70mm IMAX print. I will say that. Watch at the BFI when the tickets go on sale. BFI IMAX 100% will be there opening day. But aside from that, I didn't know what to think heading into this film. I didn't know what to think when I sat down. Some people said they really enjoyed it. It was too long. It's 2.5 hours long. And if I give my impression on the film from today, from the first viewing, I really enjoyed it. And I also didn't have a problem with the runtime. Maybe they could have shaved off 5-10 minutes, but in terms of set pieces, in terms of action, in terms of story and characters, I don't feel like we ever get too much of someone. I don't also feel that we get, one actor we get too little from. An actor I didn't actually know was in this film, Antonio Banderas. Just didn't have a single clue he was going to be in this film, which was very random, but very cool. Because I was like, is that Antonio Banderas? It was. And that's how I've kind of felt heading into this, that I've had a really good time today. And I think that's important when you're approaching these films. Maybe it's because of what people were saying before. Maybe because of course, the fourth film, isn't that well received. Although it was at the time by critics, which has been very fascinating. And if anyone's curious about the cycle of critics, the Rotten Tomatoes stuff, people are bored of hearing about it, but I'm always curious. The Rotten Tomatoes score has gone from, I think, 50% to 61% in the last few days. Now, if you don't pay attention to Rotten Tomatoes, that's fine. I don't normally. But I do think it's very interesting that in two big cases, which is Elemental and Indiana Jones, both premiered at Cannes, both lukewarm reception at Cannes, once they started getting screened to normal critics, I'm not including myself in that, I wasn't at a press screening, I was at a different event, but in the sense of real critics, people that are approved on there, that go to the press screenings or the multimedia screenings, those scores have jumped quite high. And that doesn't happen too much, if I'm being completely honest with you. And I think that goes to show is how different the crowds are, the outlets are that cover that event versus those that will be seeing it. And I expect that score to creep up a bit as we do head towards the release, I think Friday in America. So if you're worried about things like Rotten Tomatoes, there's so many variables to take into account. Don't ever let Rotten Tomatoes discourage you from watching a film if you want to watch the film. I don't mind it as an aggregator because it's more a fact of what percent of people approved who have seen this basically rate it 3 out of 5 or more. That's the logic I've always had to it, each to their own. Again, it's not important for me, but general audience, they do look at stuff like that, and it is interesting in retrospect. But if I'm going to kind of break into this film a little bit, as I said, this is completely spoiler. I'm not going to talk about the story, the plot. It's called The Dial of Destiny. There's your MacGuffin, which has actually got some real life history attached to it, which is always great to see these films. I'm glad it wasn't just them trying to do something really random and out there, that there is some history to go off, and I think that's certainly a success of what made the original 3 work. And maybe one of the issues people have with Crystal Skull was that jump to science fiction, was that jump to aliens and things like that. The atomic bomb, of course. Asteroid City also had an atomic bomb. It's just Oppenheimer's out in a month. Let's keep the theme going. But with this one, I really enjoyed it. And the reason I'm sort of saying it in that way is that I'm just thinking of Harrison Ford's performance, who is the best thing in this film. He is Indiana Jones. John Williams' unbelievable score. Once again, cracking out a soundtrack of this quality. He did 91. Must be applauded. I thought it felt like an Indiana Jones film, and the opening, the de-aging sequence, I'm actually going to kick off there. That's the best de-aging I've seen. Now, I'm looking at this in the biggest screen in the country, so maybe it'll look different on a smaller screen, who knows, but for me, I did think this was legitimately, we're back in the 80s. This is a younger Harrison Ford. How they were able to do that, I thought was remarkable. Choicing of scenes, it being shot at night, being shot in darker, that does help. Having a blindingly light thing. If it had been set in daytime, maybe it could have been different, but credit to the VFX teams for doing that, credit to the director's approach to it. I thought it looked phenomenal, and I loved that sequence at the start. It felt like Indiana Jones, it felt we were back, it felt like he was back, and then the film sort of goes from there, of course, set in the 60s, during the moon landing. That's the context I give on the story. I loved the late 60s setting for this, and also bringing in Mads Mikkelsen. I love the fact that we don't have Russians as the villains. Not that I have a problem with that in the fourth film, but Indiana Jones is inherently Nazis, right? It's always been Indiana Jones against Nazis. There's a reason they went back to it in the third film. They've done it again for the fifth film. And I love the idea that the concept is a loser from the war trying to right the wrongs that happened in that war. I say righting the wrongs, their wrongs. Not that there was, any of that sort of stuff. And it's like lessons were not learnt in the sense of story, not production. And I think that's the key to this, is that you can instantly be on board with your hero characters, you can instantly be against the villains, and Mads Mikkelsen is not going to disappoint as a villain. He never ever does, and I really like him in this. Some might say there's not enough of him, but I think we get just about enough. And I've seen some criticism of people saying Mads Mikkelsen's been cast to play, and that's in this film. Listen, if you're a casting agent, if you're working on you want an evil European villain type thing, I know he literally played Grindelwald last year in a recast. Mads Mikkelsen is not a bad person to cast in that. He enjoys playing villains. He takes on a lot of other projects than villains as well. Some will say he's had a shorthand in a couple of other films, but you know what you're going to get with him and his quality. And also, Thomas Kretschmann being cast in this as well, I absolutely loved. Didn't know he was going to be in this film. Very, very welcome surprise. Another actor who also ends up playing a lot of Nazis across big films. And that's something people really talk about with certain actors. So, leaving the villains there, I want to talk Harrison Ford, as I said. Is this his best performance as Indiana Jones? That's the question I have, and that's a question I'm going to take to watching on a rewatch, because he is the heart and soul of this film. It is his film. At no point does it feel like he's veering off to another character taking over. I know there's been the usual clickbait, there's been the usual thumbnails, the images you'll see. It is not any of that as far as I'm concerned. It felt like an Indiana Jones film. Its story arc begins and ends with it being an Indiana Jones story. It is not having a gust of wind put the hat to another character, like how the fourth film ended. And that's what was most important for me, that it didn't feel like we're setting things up. It felt like closure. It felt like this is the story of Indiana Jones. This is the final adventure. And what is that adventure going to be? Why are they going on this adventure? And I was certainly enthralled by the story behind it. And I think as well, I'm obviously not going to do spoilers, but there's a very emotional moment. It's a backstory to where the events, why he is in the position he is at the start of the film. I think they handled that very well, and there is also some behind the scenes involved in that, which I'll talk about in the spoiler discussion, which I also think they did the best possible thing they can do with an actor who they cannot put in a film. Looking at you, Warner Brothers and Ezra Miller, they handled that very well with this film, I feel. And credits James Mangold. I've not spoke about him yet, but the direction for this film, I thought was superb. The action sequences, they felt like action sequences. I never felt that there was too much CGI. Again, you've got an older Harrison Ford, and a lot of the action they did around the film with him, I thought was appropriate for his age. Not any age jokes or anything, but of course it wasn't him sprinting around and running around everywhere. But that's why we get that great opening sequence seeing the young Indiana Jones again, when he is, it is set in the mid-40s, setting up the story for this. But also it's great to see him still exploring, and kind of, again, what we missed with that fourth film is that love for histories, archaeology. That's his profession. I like that we got a return to that, because I don't think we had that done in Crystal Skull. And as I said, I think Lucasfilm learnt their lessons from that. Of course, Spielberg, I think, has a story credit for this film. He was on board to attach at certain points, did drop off to make West Side Story. Completely understandable. That film is another Spielberg masterpiece. And of course, John Williams back on the score. George Lucas not involved. He was at the world premiere. Of course, Kathleen Kennedy, who's been involved in every single Indiana Jones film, going back to Raiders of the Lost Ark. So you very much have the people that were on board from the get-go still involved to capacity, bar Lucas, I would say. And it feels like that's the approach, and that's the approach they needed. And I'm not going to get into a Star Wars discussion, anything like that, but there's something to look into the concept that when George Lucas finished the prequels in 2005, the first thing he would then do is go and do another Indiana Jones film. Because he'd done the Star Wars prequels, why not bring Indiana Jones back? And I know this was in production way before the sequels finished, but you can certainly see that same pattern. Is that Lucasfilm has finished their Star Wars sequel trilogy. They're now going to go back to Indiana Jones and get that one sorted. And it has been a battle for them to even get this film done, to get this film made, to get it released the way it has. Aside from injuries, you've also had COVID. You've had, as I said, directors coming and going. I thought this is a very good film and is great seeing them back on track. And I'll say this. I miss seeing the Lucasfilm logo on the big screen. Yes, you can watch it on TV. Yes, there's a lot of TV, but Star Wars belongs on the big screen. Lucasfilm are a film company primarily that were created to make films, and I do hope we are going to get those releases soon. And I'm all up for James Mangold working in the studio again, especially on his Star Wars film. So that was a very welcome bonus for me, and kind of in line with that cinematic experience. It's everything you want from going to the cinema, and that's why I'm absolutely recommending you to go check this out when it does come out. It's the big screen experience. You've got your big set pieces, you've got great action moments, you've got great comedic moments, you've got a beautiful score in the background, you've got emotional moments across the film. Certainly there are moments when I was very much emotionally invested, and that was a great thing to be able to react to for me, because sometimes when you have these old actors come back to these roles and it doesn't work out emotionally, that can be really frustrating. But for me, I absolutely loved seeing Harrison Ford in this. And as I said earlier, it feels like his film. Feels like, I say you saw the film, you can't steal your own film, but at no point are they trying to say, here's another character who's going to take over, or who's going to be doing this. And I think that's the issue that a lot of people have had with this film, with Helena being in it as well. I thought she was absolutely great in it. I had a lot of fun with her. Again, playing the goddaughter character. Again, behind the scenes, they couldn't use the son, which is quite obvious why. So I think there's been an insane overreaction online to characters being pushed, reports coming out about characters being pushed, which isn't the case. She does a pretty phenomenal job in the role, and I think that's what's exciting for me with this is that if you look at the Indiana Jones films, we've always had Marion. Marion is Indy's partner. Of course, they get married in the fourth film. People can say what they want about Temple of Doom with Willie. Of course, we have the villain in the third film. Going back to Marion in the fourth one, it is more difficult to bring on that female character. Of course, not a love interest, but a goddaughter aspect worked really well. And as I said, that is with the issue that, of course, we have with not having Mutt in this film. But of course, he's brought up for those that are really curious about what happened there, and I think they weave that stuff in very well. Again, the time setting, 1969, a really good way to do what they want to do with this film. So, kind of that being said, it's pretty hard to talk this spoiler free. It's already gone quite a bit this video. I don't feel like I've missed anything because we are going to do a spoiler discussion. I want to know what other people think. I want to know what their reactions are, if we're in a minority, if we're in a majority. It's going to be interesting seeing how this performs at the box office. We've got some juggernauts coming out in the next couple of weeks. Mission Impossible, Oppenheimer, Barbie. Personally, I think this film is not going to flop at all, no. But I think this film should have come out in December, and I'm going to kind of leave my thoughts there. If this had been the big release for December this year, because I'm pretty sure all we've got is Wonka and Aquaman, and looking at DC, it's not exactly a threat, is it? I think had this been a December release, I think it would have worked better for marketing to really, really build that effect, because I do feel this is going to get lost in the summer blockbuster season. It wasn't my most anticipated film of the year, let alone anticipated film of the summer. If I'll be honest, it wasn't even in my top 2 for the summer. Oppenheimer and Mission Impossible have had those spots, and part of me is going to wonder down the line, should this have come out in December? Is it going to be the same mistake Solo made coming out in a crowded summer for a film that does deserve better than what it could do? Now, I might be proven wrong. This might blow up the box office, being an insane hit. I would love that. But part of me thinks that this is going to be something that is left behind in a few weeks. It's not against the quality of the film. It could be a whole range of things. Again, people's issues with the fourth film, delays to the fifth one, things like that. People being worried about the outcome, seeing its reaction at Cannes. Things haven't worked out for it, but I really do recommend seeing this in the big screen. I had an absolute blast seeing it. Am I going to go see it again at the cinema? I'm not sure, and this is the big thing with me. Nothing to the quality of the film. It's 2.5 hours. Feels it slightly towards the end. And people, if they're struggling with the story, if they're not invested in the certain archaeological aspect of it, I'm going to leave that there, then it's going to be an even tougher sell to them with where the film goes, and that will, of course, lead to their outcome. But for me, it worked. But I do wonder about audiences. I do wonder how many times can you go and see it? Does it have the rewatchability? I do want to rewatch it. But it's not an instant rewatch for me. I will be picking it up on 4K. It will go in the Steelbook collection with the other ones. And I will like to see it. And it'll be great to see it, with the others in a marathon of sorts. Because Crystal Skull would be in there too. But that being said, that's going to do it for this video. So thank you all for watching. And as I said, comment your thoughts on Indiana Jones. Please don't do spoilers if you're watching it later on. Let me know if you like the film. If you don't, of course, that's fine. But join us for the spoiler discussion, because we will be going through the big moments, the big reveals, the big story pieces. We want to get everyone involved. That'll be a live stream when we do that, which is always important. We like getting people involved on the channel. So please also consider hitting the subscribe button. There's a lot of new reviews. I mentioned some of the big ones. We've got videos this Tuesday. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation review. That was great to record. It's edited. It's ready to go. We've, of course, then got Fallout, then we've got Dead Reckoning, we've got big blockbusters also being released. So stick around, we'll have some cool announcements too. And in the meantime, thank you for watching. We'll see you then.